A man named Vincent McKenna was a man who lives in solitude. He was a misanthropic, hedonistic, and bawdy person. He also had a close friend, Daka, a prostitute he often slept with, though he rarely paid for the service. One day, he wanted to get a loan from the bank by using his house as collateral, but because the house was no longer suitable for collateral, his proposal was refused. He was forced to leave from there. He then went to the teller to close his account and take the remaining money, but he had a negative balance and was told to make it zero before being able to close his account. Stressed, he then went to a bar to get drunk. He then went home while drunk and destroyed his fence and mailbox. Inside, he wanted to get more drink, but he was too drunk to prepare it. He slammed his hand, slipped, hit his head, and finally fell unconscious. He woke the next morning after hearing a commotion outside his house. It turned out that a freight truck had accidentally hit a tree branch, causing the branch to fall on his car. The truck was rented by a woman named Maggie. She initially wanted to take responsibility, but knowing that she wouldn't be able to pay for the damage, Vincent decided to sue the service company instead. Maggie came with her son, Oliver. She moved there with her son to get a fresh start after her divorce from her husband named David. The next day, Maggie took Oliver to the bus stop because she couldn't take Oliver to his house on her first day at work, so Oliver was forced to go to school by himself using a public bus. Soon after, Oliver arrived at his new school and got a homeroom teacher named Girardi. On that day, Oliver started his first day at school. Oliver had a weak physique which hindered him from taking heavy activities during PE, and because of that, he often got bullied by his friends, who that day took and hid his uniform so that he was forced to go home wearing his PE uniform and became the laughing stock of his friends. Meanwhile, Vincent was testing his luck by betting on horse races, but he instead lost his money. There, he met someone named Zucco and asked for the money Vincent owed him. The problem was that Vincent owed Zucco through loan sharks, so if he didn't pay within the allotted time, he would get in trouble. Since his cell phone was in his lost uniform, Oliver couldn't open the map to his house, but luckily, he remembered the route and arrived home safely. Unfortunately, since his home key was also in his uniform, he couldn't get inside. At the same time, Vincent just arrived at his house. Oliver tried to borrow Vincent's telephone to call his mother. Vincent reluctantly invited him, but unfortunately, Maggie didn't pick up the call, so Oliver had to wait for his mother to call him back at Vincent's house. Shortly after, Maggie called back and asked Vincent to help look after Oliver while she was working, but Vincent didn't want to do it voluntarily. He asked for an hourly fee of $12 for that, and Maggie was forced to agree to pay Vincent. Oliver then spent time watching comedy movies on TV. Vincent didn't know what to feed Oliver, then took some snacks he had at his house and gave him all that. 3 hours later, Maggie returned from work. Vincent then collected his money from Maggie before letting her take Oliver from him. He also said that he would lower the fee if she provided snacks for Oliver. Maggie asked Oliver about Vincent's figure. For Oliver, Vincent was a cool person in his own way. He didn't mind being looked after by an old man like Vincent because their houses were also next door to each other, so Maggie had no other choice but to pay Vincent because she had to work and couldn't look after Oliver. One day, during her break time, Maggie was about to leave to pick Oliver up at school, but she was told that hospital policy prohibited nurses from leaving the hospital during working hours, so Maggie called Vincent and asked for help picking Oliver up at school. Vincent forbade Oliver to ask where they were going. Vincent also wanted Oliver to call his mother and told her that Vincent had picked him up. Oliver then went to a payphone while Vincent was picking up his laundry. At that time, Oliver happened to meet his school friends, Robert and his friends, who often bully him at school. He was beaten because he had reported Robert to the teacher regarding his uniform, which Robert had hidden before. When Vincent saw the fight, he immediately stopped them. Fortunately, Vincent knew Robert and his parents. He then threatened to report him to his parents if he kept fighting. Vincent also broke Robert's skateboard in half and told him to leave Oliver alone. On the way home, Vincent told Oliver to learn to defend himself instead of slapping like a girl. Vincent said that his small body is not a standard since everything depends on the mind. After work, Vincent invited Oliver to go to a facility where people with dementia were treated. There, Vincent acted as a doctor to meet a woman named Sandy. She was Vincent's wife who suffered from dementia. Vincent talked to his wife with affection and care. After that, a nurse named Anna said that she could wash Sandy's clothes, but Vincent refused and wanted to do it himself. He had been doing it himself for 8 years. After that, Vincent taught Oliver how to defend himself. Since Oliver had weak muscles, Vincent taught him the movement to attack and immobilize his opponent with one movement. When Maggie came home from work, someone from the court visited and gave her a letter that turned out to be a summons to trial because David, her ex-husband, planned to get Oliver's custody. She was sad to know that. When she entered Vincent's house, Vincent asked why she was crying. Vincent's reaction managed to cheer her up for a moment. One time, Vincent accompanied Daka for an ultrasound because she was pregnant. He helped Daka by pretending as her husband so that the payment for the examination would be cheaper. Apart from that, since he owed Daka some money, he also had to pay the examination fee. At school in PE class, Vincent had a handball match against Robert. Vincent's team was badly beaten. Even Robert deliberately threw the ball at full strength straight to Oliver's face and caused his nose to bleed. Oliver was angry and replied to what Robert did to him with a move taught by Vincent and sent him fainting. After coming home from school, Oliver told Vincent how he managed to beat Robert at school. Daka wondered what happened to Vincent that out of nowhere taught a little kid how to fight. When Daka left, Oliver asked about Daka to Vincent. Instead of saying that Daka was a prostitute, Vincent chose to say that Daka was a lady of the night, which Oliver wouldn't know the meaning of. At another time, Vincent took Oliver to the horse racing betting place. He taught Oliver how to calculate the odds to increase his chances of winning. Oliver then casually made a bet by choosing the horse with his pocket money, likewise with Vincent, and when the race finished, their horses turned out to win the race. They got a lot of money but pretended like they lost so as not to get Zucco's attention. They then immediately left the place to avoid Zucco from collecting his debt to Vincent. With that money, Vincent saved some of it, cleared his debt to the bank, and closed it. Then they both spent the remaining money to have fun buying food, playing games, and eating at a bar that a small kid like Oliver shouldn't be visiting. At the same time after work, Maggie got a voicemail from Oliver's school informing her about the fight incident where Oliver beat Robert until he bled. Since Vincent was drunk, they both went home by taxi. Maggie was angry because Vincent took Oliver away without her consent. Vincent and Maggie argue because Maggie was not told that Oliver was fighting at school. Vincent replied by saying that it was because she was rarely at home. Maggie said that Vincent was a selfish person, despite knowing a thing about him. One day, Maggie met with Oliver's school principal and Girardi to discuss Oliver's problems. Maggie was forced to tell her household problems, where David often had an affair until they divorced, and that now David wanted Oliver's custody, making the principal and Girardi empathize and understand what happened to Oliver. Meanwhile, Oliver and Robert were punished to clean the toilet. It turned out that they had something in common. They were both abandoned by their father when they were just a child. Unexpectedly, the punishment made the two of them closer. Robert finally returned Oliver's cell phone, wallet, and house key that he took yesterday. One day, Vincent was told to come to the facility where his wife was being treated by an officer named Shirley. Vincent was informed that he had reached the due date to pay for his wife's treatment fee. If not paid, Sandy would be transferred to a more affordable facility. Shirley asked Vincent to pay the fee for the full service plus 3 months down payment by the next week. Of course, Vincent didn't have that much money at that moment. When he returned from there, he gave Anna tips and asked her to take care of his wife's laundry. When she left, he immediately stole the drugs there because he needed money, and with the help of Daka, he managed to sell the drug and unfortunately got only $100. Since he needed more money, Vincent then took all the money that he saved in the bank. $2,700, indeed a lot, but he was still lacking if he had to pay for full service for Sandy's treatment costs. He then decided to bet all his money on horse racing. He chose 3 horses, but unfortunately, none of them won that day. He miserably lost all his money in a single day. The ordeal is not over as he arrived. Zucco was already there to collect the money Vincent owed him. Zucco planned to take valuables that could be taken from there, but Vincent didn't want his wife's belongings to be taken, so he tried to fight back. Unfortunately, before he could even land a punch, he suddenly fell and fainted. Zucco panicked and preferred to flee from there. That afternoon, Vincent had to pick up Oliver, but since he never showed up, Oliver finally left by himself. Fortunately, as soon as Oliver arrived, he immediately went to Vincent's house and found Vincent lying unconscious on the floor. Long story short, Vincent was brought to the hospital for a CT scan by Maggie to find out what happened to him. It turned out that Vincent had a stroke and had to undergo therapy to restore his health. One day, Girardi taught about a saint in class and asked his students to give a presentation of a saint they chose, including Oliver. He gave the task of researching someone his students knew and determining whether they had the right qualifications to be called a saint. When Oliver returned home, he met Daka, who was looking for Vincent. Oliver told her that Vincent had a stroke and was hospitalized, so they went to visit Vincent at the hospital, who at that time was having a verbal therapy session. Vincent was annoyed with himself for not being able to speak normally, and because the situation was getting tenser, Maggie ordered Oliver and Daka to leave. While Vincent was being treated at the hospital, both Oliver and Maggie helped with his therapy session. Even Oliver and Daka also helped clean Vincent's house so that when Vincent was discharged, he will be happy to see his house. Over time, Vincent's condition was getting better. The therapy he was undergoing and Oliver, who always came to cheer him up, helped him regain his health back. Short story, Vincent was finally discharged from the hospital. He was shocked when he saw the condition of his house, which was neat and clean. As a friend, Daka helped to take care of Vincent, of course, for a fee of $12 per hour, the same as when Vincent looked after Oliver. Elsewhere, the trial of Oliver's custody began. Unfortunately, David hired a good lawyer who managed to collect facts such as Oliver, who was looked after by Vincent, who often took him to bars and horse betting places and even often hung out with Daka. Maggie just found out that Daka was a prostitute. That evidence made her lose the trial and had to share custody with David. Maggie came to Vincent and got angry with what he had done behind her, but instead of apologizing, Vincent blamed Maggie for letting Oliver hang out with someone like him. After leaving the hospital, Vincent found lots of letters and messages on his phone. Vincent was surprised to find 7 messages from Anna, who informed him that Sandy had died. He was devastated to know the truth. The next day, Vincent went to meet Shirley. He was given a box containing Sandy's ashes. Since there was no news from him for a week, they were forced to cremate Sandy as Vincent had directed before if Sandy one day died. Not only had to share custody, but the court also ordered Maggie to hire a babysitter. Imelda, a woman hired by David, then showed up to look after Oliver. When they came home, Oliver took time to visit Vincent, who was daydreaming in his backyard. Oliver said his condolences for Sandy's death. Vincent told Oliver to stop taking care of him. Oliver was sad because Vincent looked hopeless and said that Vincent was not just a failure, but Vincent didn't care and instead told Oliver to leave him alone. To get rid of his sadness after his wife's death, Vincent threw away everything related to his wife. He also threw all his things in his bedroom into the trash. At that time, Oliver saw him and decided to take back the things that Vincent threw away. At school, Gerardi reminded his student about their assignment, so after school, accompanied by Robert, Oliver did some research about Vincent, whom he had chosen as his subject of research. First, Oliver asked people in the bar about Vincent when he joined the Vietnam War. It turned out that Vincent was a famous major surgeon. Oliver then went to meet Anna to ask about Vincent's habits when visiting his wife. He also interviewed Daka because she was one of Vincent's closest friends. 2 weeks passed. That day, the students at school had to present their research on stage. Oliver was ready for it. Even Maggie purposely took leave, while Daka was in charge of taking Vincent to the event. Daka pretended to ask to be accompanied to the hospital, though she actually brought Vincent to watch Oliver presenting his assignment on stage. In short, it was Oliver's turn. Oliver said that saints are not only the pious, but can also be just a common person who is respected for their commitment and dedication to other human beings. For some people, Vincent might not deserve to be called a saint because he looked like a heavy drinker, a heavy smoker, and a gambler who liked to cuss and lie, but inside, Vincent was a good and kind-hearted person. Oliver introduced Vincent in front of the crowd. Vincent was a child who grew up in poverty and learned all the things that children should not do, namely fight, cuss, and gamble. In 1965, Vincent joined the army to participate in the Vietnam War. He managed to save 2 of his comrades when they were surrounded by 2,000 enemy soldiers and was awarded a Bronze Star for his courage. Oliver also told how Vincent was willing to look after him when his mother and he had just moved, even though he initially didn't want to, but he did it anyway because that's what saints do. Oliver also explained how Vincent always washed his wife's dirty clothes for 8 years since his wife suffered from dementia because saints never give up. Oliver said that Vincent taught him to fight because Oliver had to have the courage to fight for himself. Oliver also openly talked about how he was taken to horse races, betting places, and gambling because for him, Vincent wanted to teach about risk and bankruptcy since life was unpredictable. Vincent was also willing to make sacrifices when he only ate canned fish while his cat ate fresh fish. Oliver then invited Vincent to the stage to be handed the sainthood medal. One day, they all went to the hospital because Daka was giving birth. Since then, Vincent lived with his loving neighbors, Maggie, Oliver, Daka and his baby, and sometimes Robert, who often visited to eat together or celebrate something.